Now, could Charles Moore, former editor of the Daily Telegraph, the Sunday Telegraph, and indeed the most important position of all, the Spectator, could he become the new chairman of the BBC? He's a vocal critic of the licence fee. Indeed, he took his principles all the way to court in 2010. His appointment could come hand in hand with Paul Dacre, former editor of the Daily Mail, taking the lead at Ofcom, the media regulator, which also regulates the BBC. It would be a kind of double whammy for anti-Beeb there. Is it time for these kind of changes? Douglas Murray argues yes in this week's Spectator. But I'm now joined by Claire Fox. She's founder of the Institute of Ideas, former Brexit Party MEP. She's a frequent contributor to BBC shows like The Moral Maze. I mean, Claire, many people will see this as just the Tories putting their mates into nice, prestigious positions.
Actually, many people just saw it as them trolling everybody, because the reaction, as Douglas Murray makes clear, was that there was an absolute meltdown from all sorts of quarters. I think Douglas quotes one of my favourite ones, which was Alan Rusbridger, former editor of the Guardian, who now runs an Oxford college, basically complaining about an autocracy and a government putting their friends in high places with no sense of irony at all. That he had been appointed to an Oxford college, or he'd been the editor of the Guardian, and he was just part of a previous era. But, you know, I still can't believe that this is going to actually happen. And it's sort of enjoyable and good fun. But I think there's a more serious and important point here. You know, any government might want to appoint people into positions of power and influence. But I think that the greater issue is that whilst the Conservatives won a massive majority at the last election, it is true that the institutions in this country, and we've seen this very explicitly in the last 4 years, really since Brexit, have a particular type of people at their helm. Yeah. And it's not that they're Labour people. They're not, it's not a party point. Actually, a lot of them are Tories. There's a lot of Tories who are metropolitan liberals on a massive number of issues. It's not a kind of party point. It's a kind of worldview that sees things in a particular way. And in that sense, I think that there's been a kind of institutional capture. It's not exactly Gramscian march through the institutions, but it feels like that. And you do feel as though everybody who runs everything from the National Trust to the British Museum to the BBC, so every institution has a particular way of looking at the world, and therefore are affronted by worldviews that don't coincide with their own. And I mean, we've just been listening to Professor Gupta. She's been slightly on the receiving end of this. I mean, it's like, dare one dissent on anything and feel the full wrath of a particular institutional worldview. So I hope we can shake things up this way. And when I say we, I'd like to see it.
Up one is one way. Putting bulls into china shops is not shaking things up. Well, I mean, I can understand that the Tories have watched Labour put its people into positions of importance. You know, Tony Blair put Gavin Davis as chairman of the BBC, Greg Dyke as director general of the BBC. Both were staunch Labour people. Greg Dyke donated to the Labour Party. Gavin Davis was a sort of Tony crony. I get all that they may want their own people, but it's the kind of people. I mean, putting Paul Dacre into Ofcom. This is the digital age. Ofcom's big job now is regulating digital communications. Paul is an old steam engine newspaper man with ink in his fingernails. Putting Charles Moore into the BBC as chairman, this is someone that doesn't even watch any television. Probably doesn't even know how to switch one on or switch one off.
Yeah, so I think that's the point.
That's just vandalism, is it not?
Yeah, well, that's the danger with it. It's you know, that all the time there's a feeling that politics amounts to nothing more than tit for tat. You know, even with something like cancel culture, the people who hate cancel culture decide to cancel the cancellers. And in this instance, it's a bit. That's why I started off saying it's a bit like trolling. You know, it's kind of you add your people in, we'll have our people in. I was simply just trying to describe what the issue was, and I can understand the attempt to shake it up. But I agree with you that just putting place men or women in, you know, just shaking it up by having personnel that will annoy everyone isn't really the point. And I think that actually Douglas Murray makes this very clear, that there's more profound cultural questions here. On the one hand, it's interesting to see the Conservative government making an attempt at entering into this cultural arena, which I think is underestimated. I think that, you know, this arena of political capture in the cultural sense is something that everybody should be concerned about, because it has a profound impact on the kind of news we get, on the kind of media we have, and the kind of institutions we have. But I would actually say that what we need to do is not just put in different people, but actually have a big discussion about what the attitudes within those organisations are. I mean, and no disrespect to yourself, Andrew, but what's interesting is the impact that the announcement that you were about to be involved in another TV venture has also sent shockwaves through. And when I talk about shaking things up, that's what I mean. I mean, there is a complacency in these institutions that there's only one way to view the world. And look at the shock that people got when, for example, in the EU referendum, people didn't go along with things. There is a kind of assumption of we know best, and an outlook that you dare not challenge. And so I think that what we need is a shake-up. I hope it goes beyond Paul Dacre at Ofcom. I'm not making any comments on that. If that's what it amounts to, it's immature and childish, to be frank. It won't make any difference. It's been enjoyable. I also think it is worth noting that a lot of well-known commentators said things like, if Charles Moore becomes the head of the BBC, everybody at the BBC will leave, without also noticing that indicated a kind of groupthink gone mad. You know, what you're admitting is that people all think with the same way and they don't want somebody different in. And I do think that these things impact our democracy, because there is a sense in which now people do not feel that their views are represented in the media. They do feel as though there is a one-tone conversation. I think in relation to the coronavirus issue, there is people have had the stuffing knocked out of them. The people in Hartlepool and the Northeast are not rejoicing at the impact, as Professor Gupta has said, which is the economy isn't just some abstract notion. It will destroy the livelihoods of the people in the Northeast, that they've overreacted in this way. That should be discussed without you being called a COVID-idiot, you know, without being dismissed as some sort of flat earther who's an anti-vaxxer. And so I just would appreciate that we understand that institutions run by people who have groupthink at their core and only can see things in one particular way has been incredibly destructive of a trust in institutions, in democracy, and in people in authority. And I would like it to change. So I don't mind the odd bit of stirring, but it's not sufficient, and a more profound discussion is required.